We now return to already in session.
And I ran out of battery. As I was saying before, there are many examples of these antique town guard swords which have blued or blackened hilt elements. And I thought that since this particular example I got from LK Chen is not what is expected to be sent out to customers as far as how the finish on the hilt is, it would be a good example to try and do chemical bluing on. Now, I didn't talk about the handling characteristics of this particular sword, but I find it very, very nice in the hand. It has a very acute point to it. And again, mind you, I don't practice any side sword or rapier, so I'm just playing around with it based on what little I do of follow along at home HEMA. It has a flattened diamond cross section. Even though it's very thin in the foible, it can still give very firm thrusts. It has an incredibly sharp point. Let's see, I have the world's smallest piece of paper to test the edge on, but if I test it here, even with this very small piece of paper, it comes quite sharp with the factory edge. It's obviously much broader than most rapier-style swords at the base, so it can deliver quite good cuts, even if you're just giving small wrist-powered cuts with it. And if you want to give a proper elbow or shoulder-powered cut, it's going to deliver quite fearsome cuts. Again, we'll talk about the handling and the balance on a future video. So for the rest of this video, let's just talk about converting this into a new fashion of hilt and see how well it goes. Might be a disaster. Let's find out. Okay, we prepped the blade, and I'm using this Caswell stainless steel Blackner gel. And again, the hilt components are made of stainless steel. Now, I've used this previously on the carbon steel of the Ribaldo, and it did seem to work. The question is if this will work just as well on the stainless steel elements. We're going to start just on the pommel and see how that does. I've taped up the blade, in part to help protect me from getting injured, and also to try and prevent too much from spilling over on the elements that I don't want darkened. Hopefully that will minimize the amount of cleanup time afterwards. So I'm just going to paint it on. It works very quickly, and then I get it off just with simple water. So we'll start with the pommel, which should be easy to rinse off, and we'll see how it does. All right, we'll see if I can apply it with a cotton ball. I don't think that it sticks that well, maybe a little bit. All right, see how it goes. So putting it on. And so far, I don't see any action happening. We may have to leave it on for a while. Now, I didn't prep the surface much at all this time. Just simple cleaning. I'm going to start using my little itty bitties. See if I can get the gel going a little bit better. Oh, that's a lot of gel. There it goes. Now we're getting what we want. Yes, my pretty. Yes, my pretty. See if we can get a little bit more uniform. The underside. All right, I'll flip her over. Consistency is very interesting because once it starts to make contact and starts changing, it hardens So it goes on initially kind of like Vaseline, maybe slightly looser than that. But then after it's had the chance to start working, it quickly hardens up. It has a consistency closer to Play-Doh, maybe, and becomes hard to move. I don't smell it now, but previously, when I've worked with it, it has a pretty distinct odor. I wouldn't describe it as particularly appealing. So just for those of you who have sensitive constitutions, be aware. Right now I'm not smelling much of anything, so it might be that I'm using the blackening agent for stainless steel on carbon steel, and those disagreed with one another. I'm smelling a little bit of it now. Okay. So, not the prettiest ice cream cone in the world. The question is, how uniform is it? Obviously, the gel has not gone on super evenly. In part, that's because I don't have a great brush to apply it, in part because it's gloopy and I'm fighting against gravity, etc. So, obviously, I'm a bit of an amateur at this. The question is, how terrible will it be once we take it all off? I think we've done enough. Oh, there's one little bit here. I'll just put this last little bit on, and then we'll start the cleaning process. Now, there's a wire wrap here, and on antiques, the wire is often blackened also, because it needs to be rinsed often, because the gel gets kind of in all the little nooks and crannies and needs to be kind of brushed out. I'm going to try to avoid putting it in the wire wrap just because I think it'll be more difficult. I may go back and be ambitious and try and blue the wire wrap later on, but for now I will not. So let me see if I can just dip the whole thing in water. What's the worst that could happen? Now it doesn't seem to be just coming off, so I'm going to help it with my little finger here. Okay, and I'm going to wipe the end off with paper towel now. Oop. And so what I'm seeing, let me see if I can show it to the camera. So what I'm seeing is, I actually rather like the color that it's coming out. It's getting to be a very nice, like dark bluish black. But unfortunately, it's very kind of inconsistent. There's some areas that didn't get the treatment very well. It's still showing too much silver through, and other areas where it's nice and dark and flush. So how are we going to make it a little bit more consistent? That's a great question. Okay, this Quillon got just a touch of it on, or this knuckle bow here. So I think we'll try. Now this knuckle bow, I don't know if you can see, has an area that's very highly polished and an area that's not highly polished. So we have differing textures. And I think I want to experiment and just try and apply from here to the end on both sides and see how that does. And I'll try to reapply a little bit on some of the areas that didn't get polished. This will be our experiment. We'll see what happens. Okay. This time I'm sticking just to the Q-tips. The cotton ball didn't get enough on, so we will ignore that for now. Okay. So a generous coating all the way along my knuckle bow. There we go. It looks very uniform to me this time. I can definitely see parts are darkening. Question is all of it darkening? And if for some reason I don't like how this turns out, I can always polish it out. So a little bit of effort, but no big harm. And let's see if I can make the pommel very slightly darker in some of these areas here. Yeah, so the gel is not very consistent in its consistency. Sometimes it's runny, and sometimes it is gloopy. We'll do it like that. Now, I can see through the gel. I don't know how well it's showing up on camera. Let me see if I can bring it closer. That some of the knuckle bow is taking the bluing very well, and some of it is not. So I suspect I'm going to have to do something in order to prep the surface if I'm going to want to do the rest of it. Maybe I'm going to have to sand it down. Maybe I'm going to have to treat it with acetone. It looks like there's some sort of coating or finish on there that's preventing it from taking to the agent. That's not good. Well, this is an adventure. All right, I think that's long enough. So this time I'm just going to get a wet paper towel and wipe it off that way. Okay, so how did our second treatment go? So the part that I treated the pommel with seems to have turned out rather nicely. So re-blackening the pommel seems to work. And I can probably go ahead with a second coat, maybe almost all the way around, and that'll take care of any of the elements that aren't looking particularly dark. However, the Quillon. What is going on with the Quillons here? So it looks to me like the areas that are shiny are taking to the black, although not very much. But the areas that are pebbled, whatever that original kind of sandblasted texture, does not seem to want to respond at all. I'm going to turn it over real fast. We can see there's a little bit that's on the other side. So we have something going on. I'm not sure exactly what they used to seal in the 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 hilt elements in the original finish, but it's possible that they put something on. I'm not even sure what. It doesn't seem to have any coat. It doesn't seem like it's nickel plated or anything like that. But whatever they did is preventing the bluing agent from interacting with the stainless steel, which is really interesting. Again, especially because I went out of the way to make sure I picked up a stainless steel bluing agent. And admittedly, there's not just one stainless steel. There's a whole family of stainless steels. I don't specialize in metallurgy. There are people, hopefully smarter than me, watching this that might be able to weigh in and figure out what's going on. So I think that what we're going to do for today, for this experiment, is I'll just reapply on the pommel, make the pommel nice and dark, and then we'll call it a day. Doo-doo. Yeah, it's got a consistency almost like Elmer's glue. Not quite. So I would recommend, if you were to follow in my footsteps, get yourself a big brush to do this if you're planning to do a large surface, not unlike this pommel. That'll perhaps help it go on evenly. Okay, it looks like it is completely covered this time. And we'll just give it a minute, and then we'll come back. There we go. See how it's already gumming up my Q-tip. So is there anywhere else I want to test it on this quill on? I guess I can test it on this side. Let's see, so this side looks mostly not polished, so I expect it won't change much, but even as I say that, it looks like it's changing. So perhaps I'm wrong. Maybe this side is polished. Look at that. So this side of the, I keep on saying quillon, but it's a knuckle bow. So this side of the knuckle bow is taking very easily. On the other side, not so much. Okay, let's wipe that pommel down. Okay, so what's the final product look like? Let's even take off the tape here to see how bad the leaks were. Okay, taking off the tape to see how bad the leaks were. This is what we've got. Not too bad. So the pommel definitely got blackened. After the second round, it seems to have lost some of its luster. It's looking a little cloudy, so I'm not sure if I need to polish it. You can see there's still some shine right here on the tip of the pommel bud. But the rest of it's a little cloudy, and I'm not sure if that's because I was wiping it down too soon or if I just applied it too thickly, did too many coats. So that's something new to me. I'll probably just need to oil it and wipe it down and see if that helps. It does come with a sealer, so I can try to experiment with that to see if that helps the final luster. So obviously, the rest of the hilt elements are having some difficulties taking to the agent, which I'm not sure about. I guess I'll experiment with perhaps doing some sanding myself to see if that improves it. I'll just sand a little area and clean it up with some acetone or some isopropanol, and then see if that improves the bluing on it. So, does it work? Yes, provisionally. So this will be a project that we will revisit at a later date. Okay, guys, until next time, take care. Okay, and here's a quick update. What's having to happen is that the hilt elements have some type of coating on them that has to come off. So I've tried to apply the cold bluing to the remaining parts of the complex hilt, and whatever coating's on them doesn't allow the bluing agent to go on. So it's going to need to be sanded off, and then after I do that, it will actually take reasonably well, but you can see that there's still a couple little spots where it doesn't take very well. So this is going to require a lot more work, where I need to sand the entire hilt down in order to remove all of the coating so that it'll go on more uniformly. But I think that once we do that, it should be able to take. This sword vexes me greatly. I am greatly vexed. So that took significantly longer than expected. And in the end, I have blued it. Now, how successful I was remains to be seen. The issue is that the bluing agent, the cold bluing agent, is quite thick. It's very viscous, so it has a consistency similar to that of Vaseline, but you have to use multiple applications, and as we mentioned previously, this hilt has a coating on it that needs to be removed. As a result, it's a very labor-intensive process to try and clean the hilt and apply one coat, see if you got it all, remove it, carefully removing it all, and then doing it over again. So this has been many, I can't even count how much time has gone into trying to get it to look like this. It reads pretty well from a distance. So if I just share it like that, it looks pretty good. And here, I'll even compare it. We've got the sister sword over there. So you can see that it is quite nicely dark. I have it wrapped up with the protective tape. So we'll pull off the tape and see if the blade underneath survived. Okay, so after all of that sweat and tears, let's see how good my masking job was. Is it just going to be one big pile of rust under here? We'll find out. Well, it looks like a combination. So there's definitely some that has seeped underneath and will need to be polished out. And other parts of the blade look like they're okay. So there were a few leaks. This is actually wrapped the other way, so it's going to be very difficult to unwrap from here. Now, you can see that I have some rust here on the ricasso and a little bit of rust right there. This is an almost perfect example to try my little rust block eraser on. So let's see how quickly I can get rid of this rust here. There we are. That's tidied up very nicely. And I can polish out the remaining little marks to buff it out. This one's a little harder because it's underneath the guard. So one side's all clear. The other side, I'm not going to be able to do under the camera because it's asymmetrical and I can't reach over there on that side of the desk. Let's flip it over. We'll take a look at the other side. Other side looking very clean. There's just a little spot over here that I'll zap real fast. And so for these little bits that are right up against the hilt elements, I'll have to switch over to using a piece of wood with a little bit of sandpaper or a little bit of steel wool at the end to be able to get right in the little recesses. Okay, so as an epilogue, this is pretty much what we started with. So this is the Saxony rapier, and this is roughly the finish. This is much more even than what we had on the Munich Town Guard sword, although now that I'm paying closer attention, I can still see in a couple of areas that have this kind of coating on it. But on the whole, um, this hilt is a lot more consistent and a lot nicer than the state that the Munich Town Guard sword came in. And what does it look like now? So some elements came out very nicely. For instance, as we said before, the pommel blued quite nicely. The guard, unfortunately, not so much. So let me take it out of its scabbard so that we can get the full effect. So we have a nice shiny sword and a, if not blackened and blued, perhaps a patinated, aged pommel. So we have a hilt that looks like something that's rather old. So again, the difficulties are that you end up having to use so many different sessions, and the viscosity of the bluing agent, which is really, really thick, ends up leaving snail trails even when you don't have to very heavily prepare and sand down the underlying metal underneath it. So the combination is really tough, and I have sweated on this for long enough. So for this point, I'm probably just going to leave it as is. And admittedly, like at a distance, it reads pretty well, and I do think it has a handsome look to it. But up close, it's still pretty rough. So I will probably be continuing to work on this. This will be a project blade that will continue to be getting some love. I think that it's got the bones of a good look to the sword there. It's just not quite there yet. I'm going to give this whole project maybe a C. It's certainly a learning experience. I cannot recommend the particular avenue that I took to anyone else yet who might be in a specific circumstance. There's too many variables there. I don't know if it's just the agent that I was using, or if it's something about how the hilt is prepared and how they're coming out. It looks like they have, again, a little bit of something unusual going on with the final finish that requires a lot of preparation. If I were going to do it again, I might actually try and disassemble the whole hilt assembly, because it's very difficult to get into all of the little nooks and crannies when doing preparation and cleaning, and certainly when application, cleaning off, reapplying, doing your final polishing and finishing on there. Still, it's a learning experience, and hopefully someone else out there learned something from it and got a kind of interesting looking sword at the end of it. So thanks for sticking along for the ride. If anyone stayed there till the end, we'll see how the newly refurbished Munich Town Guard sword cuts in a future video. Until next time, guys, cheers.